Hi, Sandra here from Creating Space. I have put some white fat on top of my heat-proof glass board here, and I have then put a piece of grease-proof paper over it. Now, why put white fat on here first? Because it makes this lie flat. If I didn't, this would be curling up at the edges and it would be rendered absolutely useless. But I figured that since that's what I do when I'm baking to line tins, it'll work, and it does. Ta-da! So I've got a flat surface. But of course, this being baking paper, it's a non-stick baking paper. I have here my large size glue gun, which has got, I think it's the 11mm glue sticks in. And what I want to do is to show you how you can make a leaf veiner. So I've got it well warmed, and I'm just going to draw my leaf shape. So it doesn't really matter for demonstration purposes how accurate this is. If you have a particular cutout, a cutter that you want to make a veiner for, then you could obviously draw the outline for that, and you could then make it, the appropriate shape. But I'm just doing a freestyle one, and I'm just taking care to fill in all the gaps so that I have complete coverage. And I'm just going to put this over some paper, and I'm going to switch my glue gun off. I'm now going to leave this to set and to cool down, because I know from experience I don't really like getting my fingers burnt with this stuff. And I'm going to come back and show you how to finish it off. Okay, when it's cooled down, you can remove it from the baking parchment and you'll have this. So it is sort of gently raised on one side, and then the back of it should be perfectly flat. If you don't have your glue gun hot enough, this bit will probably be uneven and possibly lumpy and bumpy. Sometimes that can be an effect you can make use of, but sometimes it's not something that you want. Right, so there are two ways to finish off this leaf veiner. If you have one and you want to use it, you can use a fine glue gun like this one to add raised veins on here. Now, bearing in mind, if it's raised on here, when you use it as a veiner, it's going to make an indentation to your leaf. And the other way of doing it, if you want your leaf to have raised veins, is to use one of these things, which is a wood burner. And I have a wood burner here, which was a relatively cheap and cheerful one. I think it was about 16 years or something. And it has a lot of different tips. And I've put a fine tip on here, and then you can basically switch it on. Don't wait too long, because you don't want it super, super hot. But you can then take that when it is warm and do your veins. Now, that's not very warm at the moment because I've literally only just switched it on. If you get it too hot, you'll find that you end up with too much melted glue. Okay, so it needs to be warm enough that you can actually get some mark out of it, but not so hot. There we go, you can see. Or you might be able to see, hopefully you might be able to see, that that is now creating a vein in that glue. And so I can now start to do whatever veins I decide I want. And I can make them as deep or as shallow as I want. If you get odd little strings of glue, then you can pull those away. It's not an issue. You can press deeper at the centre and go shallower at the sides, or whatever I want to do. And I can add more veins in just the same way as I would if I was drawing them. And when you've done this, you can use it to make clay leaves or whatever it is that you fancy. Now, I do stress that this is not food safe, so I don't recommend it for fondant unless you know only too well that you're going to be using the decorations yourself and that no one is going to be eating them. Okay, but it is not theoretically supposed to be used for doing your fondant decorations. And so physically there's no reason why you can't, but you know, it's not food safe. So I'm going to put another line through there, and then I'm going to switch that off and put it to one side. Now all you need to do is to let this cool down and your veiner is ready. Now there's nothing stopping you, of course, if you feel like it. When this has cooled down, you could put raised veins on the other side. There's no reason why you can't if you feel like it. Now I have some examples that I've done before. Now this is one where it's got the raised veins on it that I did with the glue gun on one side. This is what happens if you don't make sure your glue is hot enough. You don't get a good piece. Okay, so that's what not to do. And here's the very first one that I made, the first leaf that I made out of clay, air dry clay. And as you can see, it's got these little bumps on, and that was because my glue gun wasn't hot enough and there were little gaps in the glue. Now, although you could say, well, okay, that's not brilliant. In actual fact, if you painted that, you could have those little bumps as white bumps, and they could be raindrops on your leaf. This is only a very thick one. I didn't bother to roll out the clay, I just pressed it onto the mould. But you can see that you do get some decent veining on there, even with one that was badly done. Okay, so I've just taken a bit of air dry clay here. This is Carioca brand air dry clay. I'm just going to mould it a little bit. If it's got a little dry, just add a tiny amount of water to moisten it again. And I'm just going to roll it out onto my non-stick mat here. Now the trouble is with my non-stick mat, it's for baking use. It's got those circles on the other end, so I've got to make sure I put this in the middle so I don't get all those circles on my dough, or on my clay as it happens, not dough, clay. There we go. And what I'm going to do is try picking this up, thinking about it. I'm going to press it onto my leaf. I'm just going to pull away the excess and see how that does, because I see no reason to bother fussy cutting this with a pair of scissors if just doing this with my thumb, as it happens, will yield reasonable results. So there it is, pressed on. What you might want to do is to spray it with some kind of non-stick spray, I guess, before doing that. But basically that's not bad. It's a little bit untidy around the edges. But the impressions are quite good. I'm quite happy with that as veining goes. And I'm sure that, you know, if I was making these in the shape of an actual leaf cutter that I already had, it would be perfect. And it would be cheap. Thanks for watching. Take care now. Bye bye.